We are going to talk a little bit more on the local side with regards to municipalities and counties, and then finish it up with some legal information. So first two presentations will be from Dave Hansen and Mike Hardy. Both are professional engineers and both are professional traffic engineers. One is from the city of Green Bay and the city of Appleton. And by a coin toss, I believe that Dave Hansen is going to go first. Dave's got 25 years of experience in traffic and transportation engineering with the beautiful city of Green Bay and Packerland. And he currently manages the city's traffic signal systems, streetlights, road signs, pavement markings, anything else, buses, taxis, front-end operations for the Packers, anything else?
We do traffic control for the games.
Okay, traffic control for the games. And in addition to that, he likes to work as an advisor of the city's Traffic, Bicycle, Pedestrian Commission, which is great. Lead guitarist, backing vocalist. I'd like to hear more about that. Do any good riffs for us? Or
I did not bring my radio.
Oh, all right. If you see Rich Handrick here, he's a bassist. He works here at DOT, so maybe you guys can have a jam session. Anyway, his band is called Panic Station, and performing about 40 shows per year, but he's going to talk to us today about life in the city of Green Bay. Please welcome Dave Hansen.
So to start things off, City of Green Bay has adopted its comprehensive plan, or comp plan as everyone knows. Smart Growth 2022 as it was called. It was adopted in April of 2003, so obviously we've had a lot of years to implement the strategies that were adopted by council. The web address, you can actually see this 2-volume document online. Volume 1 is really just more of the analysis, or at that time, of the existing conditions of the city. And transportation is more of what I'm focusing on obviously today, but there are multifacets of the city and departments and areas that were addressed in Volume 1 as well. Volume 2 really came up with the objectives and the policies and the recommendations based off of the review of the existing. So in Volume 1, evaluating the existing conditions, there were a number of things that were identified, and I wanted to put this slide up here because safety was obviously one of the things addressed in there, and there were multiple locations that were brought up. A lot of it did have to do with the US 41, which is now Interstate 41 corridor. This actually is an example of a roundabout at the intersection of Velp Avenue and Military Avenue. So you have one of them, this is Velp Avenue being the connecting highway, this is Military Avenue being a local yet primary arterial of our system. So as part of this project, you can see elements that we use for access management. We have this slip lane that came off of Velp Avenue, so this is heading actually into our downtown here. You have a skewed intersection, signalized intersections. So we had a few things here that we took care of. As you can see, we've got 2 driveways for this convenience center, kind of like a quick trip BP type place right here. So we combined the driveways over here into one, accommodating truck turning movements as well over here where most of the fueling takes place. But the slip lane, as I had brought it before, we brought this into the roundabout. As you can see here, there's a driveway for Village of Howard traffic coming in this way. So now this access comes off over here, yet we still preserved one down here for the full access. So kind of addressed 2 items into one, safety and for access management for this. Oh, this as well too. This was actually pretty much a nightmare over here. This was, just one big driveway on this for this property over here. As you can see, they had a lot of those basically like car parts. They parted out cars and everything over here. So they really cleaned things up over here. Ended up getting a single access, primary access over here, where they just have a service access over here. So as you can see, it really cleaned up the area. And of course here too, my last point was adding pedestrian features. As you can see, the roundabout now addresses all 4 approaches where pedestrians can cross. We connected and extended this down into the Velp Avenue corridor where you can see we didn't have pedestrian features before. And this was pretty much just a pre-timed signal at the time. Again, looking at the existing conditions, our downtown has a number of one-way pair systems. The one I've identified here actually still remains today, but we did have Cherry and Pine Streets to our downtown here that were one-way pairs, and we actually converted those into two-way streets. This right now, the reason I wanted to bring this up is that although this was recommended in volume 2 for changing that up, we have some constraints within the city, that being these access ramps from Mason Street ramp. This is our Donald A. Tillman Bridge or Mason Street Bridge. This is our Walnut Street Bridge, and this is our Nitschke Bridge or Main Street Bridge. So the 3 crossings that we have at the Fox River in the city. Now the issue is, as you can see here, this is actually a ramp, an on-ramp to this, and this is probably our most heavily used arterial in the city. And then here's also an off-ramp. So we had considered going two-way on this, but we have a lot of design constraints here, and I think our consideration is probably going to increase once this bridge actually gets replaced. And I know that that's on our radar at this point in time for replacing that bridge. There's been deck replacements and things, but its serviceable life is certainly upon us soon. Another thing that was identified was turn lanes and bays. They identified that we do pretty good relative to left turn lanes, and I think we continue to do that. Right turn lanes, that's a whole other issue. We tried to, but we're very right-of-way constrained, which I think you can find in a lot of downtowns, that you just cannot add in those right turn lanes because you just don't have the right-of-way. Frontage roads, we've inherited some of this. This is a connecting highway. It used to be all under DOT jurisdiction, but this frontage road system along our West Mason Street corridor from I-41 to the West City limits has been a large challenge for us. This happens to be the intersection of Packerland Drive, which is a county highway, and West Mason Street. And these frontage roads have continually been a problem, and I know that we've joked sometimes with some of the DOT folks that we think our best thing to do here is just to put a whole grade separated interchange, but we know that that won't happen. They don't usually think it's funny either when we bring that up. But during the I-41 construction, what we ended up doing here, because we had crash problems, is we actually limited access and created temporary barriers. So we just put jersey barriers there, and safety was certainly improved. Some of the businesses didn't like it, but they knew it was temporary. Alleyways, I'll actually get on more into that on some future slides here. Military Avenue, we reconstructed Military Avenue in 2010. So the design process was very intensive when it came down to the access management portion. Here's the old Military Avenue. You can see Leo Street here, this crosswalk. This actually was a signalized intersection. This is Shawano Avenue, a connecting highway that goes up to 41. And so you have 2 close signals. This one really was not warranted. We did a warrant evaluation on it, knew it was not needed. And then we also had, we had transit, had bus stops along here, and oops. So what we ended up doing was we created a driveway here for these 2 developments. This is a restaurant, this is a jeweler. They maintained, we combined 2 accesses over here. Well, it's really just widening them out. So turn bays here, which is a little bit more realistic to what the traffic demand was for the intersection over here. Plus, we extended the median through Leo Street, which we did get a little bit of negative feedback, a little bit in the design of this, but a lot of the people were actually really crossing here, so we enhanced the crosswalks at this intersection, and a lot of the destinations too are west of here. So, but we actually took a safety issue, and really it's gone away now, because this used to be, we used to have all sorts of things with the traffic signals, with the 3M optical heads on there, because people were looking at this signal, thinking it was this one, vice versa. So we had a lot of safety issues at this intersection, so it was a good idea that we got rid of that. North Webster project, as you can see, 2019, we're actually starting the utilities project this year, the roadway construction through DOTs next year. So this is actually a principal arterial. I-43 is more this way, and our downtown is to the left of the screen, north is right. So as you can see, for a principal arterial, not a lot of access management. We have undivided street. We've got all of these cross streets. All of these residential properties along here, driveways, and these are all alleyways coming in. So just a lot of conflict points along this primary corridor that we needed to resolve. And when this is built next year, the same segment here is going to look something like this. We're doing intersection improvements over at University. As you can see, we've got a wide median that's going to be installed. Big feature here, which actually led to us acquiring all the properties along the east side of the roadway. We're putting in a multi-use path here. So as you know, multi-use paths and driveways really aren't a good mix. I know that some of our counterparts in Brown County have found that out more closer to the airport. But so elimination of those driveways and homes is going to make that a much more safer corridor for that multi-use path, plus provides us access control. All of these alleyways then are going to be basically dead-ended here, hammer-handled, basically designed to accommodate the garbage pickup and our public works vehicles. Another area is going to be over here for, this is 41 again, this is Mason Street. I was talking about Packline, it's more over this way. This has been a challenging intersection. Again, we got a frontage road issue. This property here has been of the interest of many developers over the years. We've had a TIA completed for the area. Bottom line, what we came up with folks over at DOT and internally was that a backage system is the only thing that's really going to solve this whole problem here. This is actually a medical clinic that's very, as you can see, it's a lot of parking, so it's highly used. So a backage system into here is actually what we want to do, and we're going to eventually extend Hinkle Street to the south. I'm kind of running a little bit low on time, so I'm going to try to wrap this up. Another item that we've been using is functional area of intersections when it comes down to access management. This is, again, kind of tied into that last project, the North Webster I was talking about, except for we're oriented north is up now. This is University. We've got a development here, American Food Groups, and they want a median cut, so they actually asked for this. They wanted full access median. We looked at it from the functional area perspective, did the calculations, and found out that this was within it, so we said no. They said, well, don't you have any gray area? We said yes, we have minimum and desirable. So we ended up just going down to the minimum on this, and there was a land swap that was done, and we actually let them have a left in, which this is actually, we're actually still in the final negotiations for this, but legal's putting together land swap documents for this, and we're going to allow the left turn in on that. Other methods of access management, not really methods, but things that we've been incorporating that we're going to continue to incorporate, especially at the roundabouts for the 41 project, is trees. And I don't know how many of you experience issues with jaywalking, but it seems like our community has an issue with it, and our cops don't really like to enforce it because they've had one issue back about 10 years ago where there was a famous Packer player and he got busted for jaywalking, and it got all over the news, so they don't like to enforce pedestrian rules too much. But so what we've been doing is working with our forestry department and creating a lot of the streetscape with trees and our terraces to give them more of that look, so it kind of discourages the jaywalking, and of course making the pedestrian crossings where they should be. So with that, we decided we're going to take the questions and answers after, so I'm going to turn that over to Mike Hardy from City of Appleton.
Mike has 20 years of professional experience, 13 as years in county as the Assistant City Traffic Engineer of the City of Appleton. Prior to this, he worked private consulting and Wisconsin DOT. Yay! Bachelor's degree in civil engineering from University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. And with that, thank you.
All right, a lot of the words I got on the slides with the anticipation that you can print it and then go back to script. So some of that'll be redundancy, but hopefully that helps you for future reference. I'm going to touch on our city policy and then get into two applications, some experiences, and kind of talk about how we kind of apply it. The policy in Appleton is very brief. It's really only a page and a half. The highlights of it are pretty much that we kind of review on a site-by-site basis. We try to focus on one driveway per parcel of land. Obviously, with larger parcels, we take that into consideration. Minimum 100 feet, 200 feet from a traffic signal. And then we, as you notice in some of Dave's applications, we try to align driveways when they line up for each other. Realistically, our policy is really basic, though. But what I would say is our practice in trying to apply the principles and try to apply the techniques, that's there. I think the biggest thing we struggle with at the city, and you'll kind of hear this echoed through the scenarios, is we just struggle from the buy-in standpoint. I think community development seems to have a stronger hold with the mayor's office than perhaps public works and traffic. And obviously that's people, that's relationships, and that's something that we continue to work on. So with that, I'll kind of carry it through the applications. So the first one is Quick Trip. Quick Trip, for those that might not be familiar, is just a high turnover convenience store with a gas station. The entire box here was a development. A TIA came in for that. TIAs in the city of Appleton is kind of a naughty word in some parts, so we do kind of struggle with just getting TIAs developed in the first place. But that said, we did get one done for this parcel. For comparison, this is one of our high schools down here, so I believe this is about 30 acres. So what we agreed to is this would be full access with this road here, and then a new roadway system would be built with full access out here. Right now, Quick Trip is just right here. They had full access here, they had full access here, across from one of our school driveways. So this was the first phase coming in. We did not show, again, with the TIA that there would be full access here. This would be right in, right out, and same thing over here on this corridor. My gut is the developer may not have been honest with the Quick Trip people, because at some point that seemed like that was foreign news to them. Even though there's an agreement with the county, because the county actually has access jurisdiction on two roads. There was agreement that those two driveways would be right in, right out. So from a traffic engineer's perspective, you're like, hey, we did our diligence, we feel confident with this, but that isn't how it actually played out. So with that said, Quick Trip was built before we urbanized County Trunk Highway JJ, or Edgewood Drive. So you can see in this picture, this is now the Quick Trip driveway across from the high school. A lot of kids now use this convenience for them, so we knew this was going to be a pedestrian issue on top of an access management issue. I would say there's easily 100 to 150 kids crossings per day, obviously going back and forth. So a lot of activity there. So when it came to then, that was built in 2015. 2017 was our construction unit urbanized. So about a year afterwards is when we started having discussions with them, being the adjacent property owner, saying, hey, we're putting a raised median through here. This is our time. This was all what we talked about. This was in the TIA. This was agreed. Obviously, at that point, we had some very contentious meetings. A lot of not so nice things were said. And I think this is where I think we started becoming really frustrated, because we felt like we were going through the right steps. We had it legally agreed this was going to be right in, right out. We even got, I hate to say this, but there were some bad things said at an internal of our own department. Like we were being unfair, we weren't being supportive of development, and at some point then we just started taking screenshots of other developments, and we all have these in our cities. You have other locations where case studies where access management did not go well. And we just say, hey, this is what it was like, this is what it could be like someday. Will it be there? Don't know. Will it happen in 5 years, 10 years? Can't tell you. It all depends on the pace of development. But in the end, we ended up modifying our design to allow a left in to the development. One other thing that we did work with the high school on, they had some other, in cooperation with this project, we did identify some other flow improvements we can make with the access in and out of their parking lot. So this is now only a right-in only. This left, or this right out actually got moved probably like a couple hundred feet down the road. So, but in the end, we did allow them to have their left in so they could have their full access. What we obviously designed this then was to try to kind of make it as uncomfortable as possible to make a left out. But as you'll see from this video here, well, what I got a video is somebody, so it's made to be a right in. There you go. So if you follow this path of this vehicle, that was designed to be a right out, and you can see he ignores about 3 signs and still scoots his way through there as a left turn. Now, admittedly, the developer was supposed to build a road to get down to this road we built so he had full access to the intersection. They chose not to. So obviously we didn't have any control of that. So it's kind of, we're waiting for the pace of development to eventually evolve, and then we'll have some more of those roadway connections that I kind of showed you on the first presentation, or first slide of this experience, and I think that'll help. But in the meantime, obviously, we're going to have compliance and enforcement issues. So I guess that's one of our experiences. So the next one I have is Oneida Street Reconstruction. This is a road that if you look in the picture, I think we have more linear feet of driveway than we do curb. So this is obviously a road that was built many, many decades ago. Yes, Burt Reynolds does hang out in the city of Appleton. So one of our goals with this project, again, trying to apply some common good traffic practice, we did get a consultant on board to help lead the design. You all probably heard the name Pat Hawley. Pat was involved with this project in trying to do an audit of the access management. We felt, again, from the traffic engineering perspective, we had a good approach to try to publicly acknowledge some of the challenges with access management and try to bring across some good recommendations to make improvements to the corridor. So the audit identified, I believe, about 35 improvements, combination of raised medians and driveway eliminations. We did narrow that down to about 30. Most of them we got rid of were the raised medians. But so this was an exhibit that was brought forward to the public information. You can see there's a lot of X's on here. So a lot of driveways were being recommended to be removed. I thought once we got through this process, we were in really good shape. But when it came time to finalize the plans, I think that's when we fastly started realizing, hey, there's more driveways in there now than we had talked about. And I think what happened is again, traffic engineers kind of did our thing, but then it got turned over to real estate to acquire right-of-way. And then slowly we started learning that through the right-of-way negotiations, driveways were given back. And in some cases, driveways were even added. So again, I think, again, that's kind of the internal city dynamic that you may or may not have to deal with as you're going through access management. Obviously we try to have good dialogue, but sometimes when there aren't project update meetings and next thing you know, you find out that there's a 90% or 100% plan, you start realizing what's really going on. And at that point, decisions have already been made, signatures have been signed, things like that. So at the end of the day, there's still going to be some great improvements on here, absolutely. 60%, if we ended up getting 19 of the 30, I mean, that's pretty good if you're a baseball player. So, so I mean, we'll take that and we'll kind of move forward. So, but I think that's where I think, again, we kind of struggled with, as I noted, we had a lack of internal support. It's not that I think the traffic engineers are saying it was our way or the highway, but it was a case of there just wasn't any dialogue. Was there any discussion about are some driveways more critical than others? So that's where some of those decisions were made without us that might have been more involved with the access management. So just to kind of, some of the trials and tribulations of dealing with access. So, that's what I had.